Reckoning. Julian stood frozen in the doorway, his eyes locked on Olivia. She was pale, but unharmed, her pregnancy more pronounced than when he'd last seen her. "Olivia," he breathed, "are you okay? Did they hurt you?" She shook her head slightly. "I'm fine, Julian." Marcus appeared behind him, weapon drawn. "Werner, put the gun down." Werner didn't move. Not happening, not until he understands what's going on. "I understand perfectly," Julian said bitterly. "Victoria used me to get inside information about Horizon. She manipulated both of us." A bitter laugh escaped Olivia's lips. "Is that what you think this is about?" The cabin door opened again, and Victoria walked in, looking completely composed. "Julian, Julian," she sighed, "always making yourself the center of the story." "What is this?" Julian demanded, confusion mounting. "Protection," Olivia answered, her voice stronger now. "Victoria came to me 3 days ago with proof that you were planning to take our baby after birth." Julian stared in disbelief. "That's insane. Why would I—" "Because of the prenuptial agreement," Victoria interrupted smoothly. "The clause that gives you controlling interest in family assets if there's a child involved, including that trust fund your grandfather left for your firstborn." Julian's mind raced. There was indeed such a clause, but he'd never intended to invoke it. "Olivia, you can't believe—" "I found the documents, Julian," Olivia cut in, her voice trembling. "The custody battle strategy, the plans to declare me an unfit mother, all prepared by your attorneys." Marcus stepped forward cautiously. "Mrs. Mercer, whatever you were shown was fabricated. Ms. Langley has been manipulating both of you." Victoria smiled coldly. "Tell them, Werner." Werner shifted uncomfortably. "I was hired to gather information on both of them, by someone else entirely." "Who?" Julian demanded. "Harrison Reed." The name hit Julian like a physical blow. Harrison Reed, Neuraltech's CEO and Julian's supposed merger partner. "Reed knew about your offshore accounts, your corporate espionage," Victoria explained. "He needed leverage to renegotiate the merger terms. I was placed in your path deliberately, Julian, to get close to you, to find your vulnerabilities." "You were working for Reed this entire time?" Julian felt sick. "Initially," Victoria admitted, "but I found something much more valuable than merger leverage. I found the truth about what you've been doing to smaller tech companies for years, crushing them, stealing their innovations, destroying lives." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. "When Victoria showed me what you'd become, what you were willing to do, I couldn't sign those divorce papers, not without ensuring our child would be protected." "So you disappeared. The blood in our apartment?" "Staged," Werner confirmed, "to buy time." Marcus had been quietly assessing the situation. "Ms. Langley, if what you're saying is true, why not go to the authorities?" "Because Julian has judges and politicians in his pocket," Victoria replied. "We needed irrefutable public evidence first, which Rebecca has now provided." Julian's phone buzzed, a news alert. The SEC had frozen Horizon's assets. The merger was suspended pending investigation. His empire was crumbling. "It's over, Julian," Olivia said softly. "The truth is out." Werner finally lowered his gun as police sirens wailed in the distance. Julian looked at Olivia, really looked at her for the first time in months. The woman who had believed in him when he had nothing, the mother of his child. He had betrayed her in every way possible. "I'm sorry," he said, the words pitifully inadequate. "Not just for this, but for everything, for what I became." Olivia's expression softened slightly.
Our child deserves better than what either of us has done." The police burst through the door, weapons drawn. As they cuffed him, Julian caught Olivia's eye one last time. "Take care of our baby," he said. "I'll make this right somehow." 6 months later, Julian sat in a prison visiting room, awaiting his first visitor since his conviction for securities fraud and corporate espionage. He'd lost everything. Horizon had been dismantled, his assets seized, his reputation destroyed. The door opened and Olivia entered, holding a small bundle. Their daughter, born 2 weeks after his arrest. "Her name is Emma," Olivia said, sitting across from him. "She has your eyes." Julian stared at the tiny face, overwhelmed with love and regret. "She's perfect." "Victoria testified against Harrison Reed. He'll be joining you here soon." Julian nodded. "And Werner?" "Immunity deal. He's working with the FBI now." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their broken past between them. Olivia finally said, "I'm moving back to my hometown, starting over. Emma deserves a simple life, away from all this." Julian swallowed hard. "Will you ever tell her about me?" Olivia's eyes met his. "I'll tell her you made terrible mistakes and that you're trying to make amends." As visiting time ended, Olivia rose to leave. Julian called after her. "The lake house. I've signed it over to you. It's not much, but it's something." She nodded, understanding the gesture for what it was, not compensation, but acknowledgement, the beginning of accountability. Watching them leave, Julian faced the ruins of the life he'd built and destroyed. His future stretched before him, years of confinement followed by the monumental task of redemption. But for the first time in years, he felt something like clarity. The price of his betrayal had been devastating, yet in losing everything, he'd finally recognized what truly mattered. As the door closed behind Olivia and Emma, Julian Mercer, former tech mogul, convicted felon and new father, began the long journey toward becoming worthy of his daughter's forgiveness.
The Vanishing Act. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as Julian Mercer straightened his Brioni tie for the 5th time in as many minutes. His eyes kept darting to the empty seat beside his attorney, Thomas Whitfield, who was checking his watch with increasing agitation. "Any word?" Thomas whispered, leaning close enough that Julian could smell his mint-laced breath. Julian shook his head, feeling sweat beading at his hairline despite the aggressive air conditioning. Nothing. Straight to voicemail. At 42, Julian Mercer had built Horizon Innovations from a startup in his garage to a multi-billion-dollar tech empire. He'd mastered artificial intelligence algorithms that revolutionized data analysis. He'd outmaneuvered competitors and charmed investors, but he couldn't seem to locate his own wife, his very pregnant wife, on the day they were meant to finalize their divorce. From the corner of his eye, he caught Victoria Langley watching him from the 3rd row. Her ruby-red lips curved into what might have been a sympathetic smile, but her eyes, those calculating blue eyes that had first ensnared him at a charity gala 18 months ago, told a different story. She seemed almost pleased by the chaos unfolding. "All rise." The bailiff's command jolted Julian from his thoughts. Judge Eleanor Blackwood entered, her steel-gray hair pulled back in a severe bun that matched her expression as she surveyed the courtroom and noticed the empty chair. "Mr. Whitfield, I don't see Mrs. Mercer present," Judge Blackwood remarked, peering over her glasses. "Your Honor, Mrs. Mercer appears to be unexpectedly delayed," Thomas replied smoothly. "We're attempting to reach her now." A camera flashed from the press section. Julian fought the urge to turn around. Horizon Innovations' impending merger with Neuraltech had already put him in the business pages, but his divorce,
especially from a wife 7 months pregnant, was tabloid gold. "We'll grant a 1-hour recess," Judge Blackwood said, clearly displeased. "If Mrs. Mercer fails to appear by then, I'll have no choice but to issue a bench warrant. Is that understood?" "Yes, Your Honor," Thomas replied. As the judge departed, the room closed in on him. Where was Olivia? Despite everything that had happened between them, she was nothing if not punctual. She had never missed an appointment, never been late to any of the mediation sessions. Her absence now was so out of character that it sent a chill through him. "Julian!" Victoria's voice came from behind him, smooth as silk. She had approached while the courtroom emptied. "Let's get some coffee. She's probably just stuck in traffic." Thomas shot Victoria a warning look. "Miss Langley, it would be better if you kept your distance during these proceedings." "Of course, Mr. Woodfield. Just offering moral support to a friend." Julian followed Thomas out, ignoring Victoria's outstretched hand. In the marble hallway, journalists clamored for a statement. "Mr. Mercer, is it true your wife has disappeared? Julian, has Olivia withdrawn her consent to the divorce?" Thomas pushed through the crowd, guiding Julian toward a private conference room. Once inside, Julian loosened his tie and collapsed into a chair. "This isn't like her, Thomas. Something's wrong." "Let's not jump to conclusions," Thomas said, though concern tinged his voice. "I'll make some calls. Hospitals, police. Do it discreetly. The last thing I need is the press getting wind of this." As Thomas stepped out to make his calls, Julian's mind wandered back to 3 months ago, when everything had truly begun to unravel. He'd been working late in his home office, finalizing the terms for the neural tech merger that would cement his legacy as one of the greatest tech innovators of his generation. The door had opened, and there stood Olivia, a small white stick in her hand. "I'm pregnant," she had said simply. No joy in her voice, just resignation. Julian had stared at her, unable to process the words. They had talked about children early in their marriage, before Horizon had taken off, before the 16-hour workdays and the international flights and the endless stream of meetings, before Victoria. "You're sure?" he asked, his voice hollow. 10 weeks, she had confirmed. "I've already seen Dr. Harrison." He should have stood up, should have embraced her. Instead, he had remained seated, his mind automatically calculating how this would impact the divorce proceedings that were already underway, how it would affect the company's public image, how it would complicate the careful exit strategy he'd been planning. "We should get a paternity test," he said, the words escaping before he could stop them. The look on Olivia's face, pure devastation giving way to cold fury, still haunted him. "A paternity test?" she had echoed, her voice dangerously quiet. 13 years of marriage and you think I'd lie about this?" "It's just procedure, Liv. With the divorce—" "The divorce you want so you can be with her," Olivia had interrupted, not bothering to name Victoria. "The divorce you're rushing through because you're tired of hiding your affair. And now you have the audacity to question whether this child is yours?" She had walked out then, leaving him with the pregnancy test on his desk, 2 pink lines accusing him of every betrayal he had committed. After that night, Olivia had retreated further into herself. She attended her prenatal appointments alone. She began converting the guest room into a nursery without consulting him. They lived like polite strangers sharing the same space, waiting for the lawyers to divide up their life. Julian's phone buzzed, snapping him back to the present. An unknown number. He answered, hope flaring briefly. "Julian Mercer?" "Mr. Mercer, this is Rebecca Winters, Olivia's friend." His heart sank. Rebecca was an investigative journalist who had never approved of him even before the affair. Her tone now was icy. "Rebecca, have you heard from Olivia?" "No," she replied tersely. "That's why I'm calling you. She missed our breakfast meeting this morning. She hasn't answered any of my texts since last night. A cold feeling spread through his chest. She's not at the courthouse either. We have a hearing. I know about the hearing, Rebecca cut in. I also know about Victoria Langley. Julian tensed. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Olivia found out about the suite at the Grand Imperial. She found out about the offshore account you set up. She found out about a lot of things. The room seemed to tilt. The Grand Imperial was where he met Victoria. The offshore account was for certain business transactions he preferred to keep private. How much did Olivia know? When did you last speak with her? Julian asked, fighting to keep his voice steady. Yesterday afternoon. She was supposed to show me some documents this morning. Documents? Rebecca's pause was heavy with meaning. Let's just say she found out what you and Victoria have really been up to. It's not just your marriage that's in jeopardy, Julian. The line went dead. Julian stared at his phone, his mind racing. What documents? What did Olivia know? Thomas returned, his expression grim. No sign of her at any hospital. I've contacted Marcus Finch, the best private investigator in the city. He's on his way. Julian nodded absently, Rebecca's words echoing in his mind. The hearing, the merger, his reputation, all of it was secondary now. For the first time in years, he felt genuinely afraid for Olivia. His phone pinged with a text message, unknown number again. Check your private email. You should see what your girlfriend has been hiding. Julian fumbled with his phone, accessing his personal email account. There, at the top of his inbox, was a message with no subject line. He opened it to find a single image attachment, a photograph of Victoria leaving a storage facility yesterday, looking furtively over her shoulder. And in her hand was a set of keys Julian recognized instantly. Keys to the lake house that only he and Olivia knew about. The realization hit him with crushing force. Victoria knew where Olivia was, and whatever was happening, it wasn't an accident.
Buried secrets. The private investigator's office smelled of stale coffee and cigarettes, though Julian hadn't seen an ashtray anywhere. Marcus Finch was a stocky man with salt and pepper hair and eyes that missed nothing. A former detective who'd left the force under circumstances he never discussed. So, your pregnant wife vanishes right before your divorce hearing, Marcus summarized, leaning back in his creaking chair. And you think your girlfriend might be involved. Julian winced at the blunt assessment. Victoria isn't exactly my girlfriend. Save it, Marcus cut him off. I don't care about the semantics of your affair. I care about finding Mrs. Mercer before something worse happens. The image from the anonymous email burned in Julian's mind. Victoria with the keys to the lake house, a property purchased through a shell company for privacy. Only he and Olivia knew about it. Or so he'd thought. This storage facility, Julian said, pointing to the photo on Marcus's desk. Can you find out what she was doing there? Marcus nodded. Already on it. My associate's pulling the security footage. What about this lake house? When was the last time you were there? Months ago. Olivia and I used to go there on weekends, but since... He trailed off, uncomfortable under Marcus's scrutinizing gaze. Since you started sleeping with Miss Langley, the investigator finished flatly. I need the address. Julian wrote it down, then hesitated. There is something else. A journalist, Rebecca Winters, called me this morning. She said Olivia found documents, something about me and Victoria, something beyond the affair. Marcus's eyes narrowed. What kind of documents? I don't know, but the neural tech merger is worth billions. There are aspects of the deal that aren't exactly public knowledge. Illegal aspects? Marcus asked pointedly. Julian shifted in his seat. Gray areas. Competitive intelligence we obtained. Tax structures we implemented. Nothing criminal, just
Just things that could sink the merger if they came to light. And this journalist has them? I don't know what she has, but if Olivia gave her anything. The investigator's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression hardening. My guy at the storage facility got something. Miss Langley's been visiting a unit there weekly for the past 3 months, rented under a shell company. He showed Julian the screen. Recognize the name? Julian stared at it in disbelief. Zenith Partners? That's one of our subsidiaries. We use it for acquiring proprietary technology. Well, it seems Miss Langley has access to it. A cold realization washed over Julian. Victoria is our external acquisitions director. She would have signing authority for Zenith. Convenient, Marcus remarked. I think it's time we had a chat with Miss Langley. Victoria's downtown penthouse was all sleek lines and minimalist furnishings, a stark contrast to the warmth of the home Julian had shared with Olivia. She answered the door in a silk robe, momentarily surprised to see Julian with a stranger. Julian, darling, I was wondering when you'd call. Her eyes flicked to Marcus. Who's your friend? This is Marcus Finch. He's helping me find Olivia. Please come in, though I don't see how I can help. Once inside, Julian noticed details he'd overlooked during his previous visits. The multiple laptops on her desk, file folders labeled with project codes he recognized from Horizon's internal system, a map on the wall with several locations circled in red. We know you've been accessing a storage unit under Zenith Partners. Why? Victoria's composure slipped for just a moment. Business documents. You know how discreet we need to be with the merger approaching. And the lake house keys? The ones only Olivia and I should know about? Her laugh was too light, too practiced. What lake house? Julian, what are you talking about? Marcus silently handed her the photograph. Victoria studied it, her perfectly manicured nail tapping against the image. This proves nothing, she said coolly. These are keys to my parents' cabin in Vermont. Miss Langley, Marcus intervened. Mrs. Mercer is 7 months pregnant and missing. If you know anything about her whereabouts, withholding that information could constitute obstruction of justice or worse. Are you threatening me, Mr. Finch? Just stating facts, he replied evenly. Julian's phone rang. Rebecca Winters again. He excused himself to answer it in Victoria's hallway. What do you want? He demanded. Turn on the news. Channel 6. Julian fumbled for the TV remote on a side table. The screen flickered to life, showing a somber news anchor. Exclusive investigation into Horizon Innovations revealed potentially illegal business practices in their acquisition of Neuraltech. Documents obtained by Channel 6 show Julian Mercer used corporate espionage and insider trading to manipulate Neuraltech's stock value before the merger announcement. Julian felt the floor drop from beneath him. The anchor continued, describing details only someone with access to his private files would know. His gaze shot to Victoria's desk, to the familiar-looking folders. Where did you get these documents? He asked Rebecca, his voice barely above a whisper. Olivia gave them to me yesterday. Insurance, she called them. She said if anything happened to her, I should release them. You think I'd hurt her? Julian was aghast. She's carrying my child. No, Rebecca said. I think Victoria would, and I think you were too blind to see it coming. The call ended, leaving Julian staring at the television as his company's stock price ticker showed a dramatic plunge. Marcus appeared beside him, eyes on the screen. We need to go, the investigator said urgently. Now. What is it? My associate just sent me the rest of the security footage. Miss Langley wasn't alone at that storage facility. There was a man with her, Douglas Werner. Julian's blood ran cold. Werner was Horizon's head of security, a former military contractor with a reputation for handling problems discreetly. And last night, Marcus continued, Werner was captured on a traffic cam driving toward your lake house with another vehicle following, registered to Victoria Langley. Julian turned to find Victoria watching them from the doorway, her expression unreadable. What have you done? He asked, horror dawning.
"Nothing you asked for," she replied calmly. "You wanted Olivia gone. You wanted the merger to go through without complications, so I fixed it for you." "I never—" "You wanted everything," Victoria snapped, her composure finally cracking. "The company, the merger, me. You couldn't have it all with a pregnant wife and a messy divorce, so I fixed it for you." Marcus was already calling the police as Julian lunged toward Victoria. "Where is she? If you've hurt her—" Victoria's laugh was brittle. "Hurt her? Julian, darling, I've known about your little lake house for months. I've known about all your secrets. Did you think I was just a pretty distraction? I've been gathering information since the day we met. On you, on Horizon, on everyone. Information is power, and I've been very, very patient." Julian's mind raced, piecing together a horrifying picture. Victoria hadn't just been his mistress, she'd been methodically collecting leverage, positioning herself within his company, gaining access to his most guarded secrets. And now Olivia, who must have discovered something, was missing. "The police are on their way," Marcus announced, "both to detain Miss Langley and to check the lake house." Victoria smiled, unconcerned. "They won't find anything at the lake house. That would be too obvious." A terrible suspicion formed in Julian's mind. "The storage unit. She's at the storage unit." Victoria's smile faltered ever so slightly, enough for confirmation for Julian. He turned to Marcus. "We need to get to that storage facility now." The afternoon sun was setting as they pulled into Secure Storage Solutions, casting long shadows across the rows of numbered units. Julian had spent the drive calling his crisis management team, trying to contain the damage from Rebecca's exposé while sick with worry about Olivia. "Unit 237, Marcus said, checking his phone as they parked. "Around the back." The facility was quiet, most of the daily staff gone. They found the unit, a large one with an electronic keypad lock. "We don't have the code," Julian realized. Marcus pulled out a device from his pocket. "Police department doesn't officially know I have this anymore." He attached it to the keypad, and after a tense minute, the lock clicked open. The metal door rolled up to reveal nothing. The unit was completely empty. "Damn it!" Julian slammed his fist against the wall. She was lying. Marcus walked the perimeter of the empty space, examining the floor and walls with his flashlight. He stopped at the back corner. "Look at this," he said, pointing to scuff marks on the floor. "Something heavy was dragged here recently." He pushed against the back wall, revealing a hidden door, a second storage unit connected to the first. "Stand back," Marcus warned, drawing a gun Julian hadn't realized he carried. The second unit was dark and cold. As Marcus's flashlight swept the space, Julian's heart stopped. There was a cot in a corner, empty but rumpled, a tray with the remains of a meal, a medical bag. "Someone was kept here," Marcus said grimly. Julian noticed something on the cot, a scarf, Olivia's favorite cashmere scarf, the one he'd given her for their 10th anniversary.